Welcome to the Crew-5 Post-Splashdown news conference. Our event should begin momentarily. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. If you are also monitoring the event video, please mute the audio on your TV or computer and listen only to the audio from the phone. If you would like to ask a question during the Q&A portion of the briefing, please press star 1 to be added to the queue. If you would like to withdraw your question, please press star 2. Do not use speakerphone when you are asking your question. I'll now turn the call over to Dan Hewitt.
Thank you, Amanda, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Post-Splashdown telecon. We just welcomed home the Crew-5 astronauts and cosmonaut. They splashed down at 9:02 p.m. Eastern Time, right on time off the coast of Florida. I'm going to keep things moving so we can let everybody go home and get off to bed. We've got 4 briefers today. I've got Steve Stich, manager of the Commercial Crew Program from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, Joel Montalbano, manager of the International Space Station from NASA's Johnson Space Center, Sarah Walker, director of Dragon Mission Management from SpaceX, and Hiroshi Sasaki, vice president of JAXA. As usual, I'm going to go to each of them for opening remarks, and then we'll open it up for questions. So to kick things off, I will pass it over to Steve Stich.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan, and thanks for everybody for joining tonight and for your interest in Commercial Crew and ISS operations. A lot of smiles in the control center tonight. Really happy to have Crew-5 home, having the crew out of the vehicle and safely on back here on planet Earth. It was a great mission, and just really excited for the crew, for Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna to be home safely. If I step back and think about this mission, it started with a hurricane and a couple-day delay back in October, and tonight we landed with just picture-perfect weather off the coast of Tampa with maybe 4 miles per hour of wind and maybe 1 or 2 foot sea, so it was great to put the crew down. The undock was very smooth. It happened early Saturday morning, about 2:20 Eastern. Very nominal on dock, and then the crew kind of went into an off-duty period for about 11 hours or so where they could sleep and eat. And then they got in their suits tonight, and we brought them on home, had a good deorbit burn. The Dragon Endurance performed very well. There was really no issues with the vehicle itself. We were able to recover, at least as I was leaving the control center earlier, a couple of the main chutes, and we had good buoys on 2 other mains. And then the drogues also, we had those inside, and we're going to get those recovered on the ship. Overall, it was a great flight. Probably the main thing we worked over the last few days was just weather. With the March time frame, a lot of cold fronts moving across the country. It took a few days to get this really nice high-pressure system over the Gulf and land at Tampa tonight. Just a reminder, the Endurance vehicle, we're also glad to have the vehicle back in addition to the crew. This vehicle will be used for the Crew-7 mission later this year. And then, of course, Crew-6 is safely docked to ISS. The crew's doing well, and that vehicle is doing well. And it was great to dock that successfully since we last talked to you. So we're really excited to have Crew-5 back home. I think most of us are, after the last 20 days after the agency FRR to now, looking forward to getting a little rest and recuperation. And I'll turn it over to Joel, and he'll tell you about the next steps with ISS.
Hey, thank you, Steve, and thank you for joining us today. As Steve said, we're all very happy to see Crew-5 successfully splash down off the coast of Tampa. This crew was up there over 150 days, and throughout that time, they performed over 200 activities, 200 experiments in science and research, technology development that's going to help us for exploration, as well as commercialization of low Earth orbit activities. They performed over 2,500 orbits of the Earth while they were up there. And again, they saw 6 visiting vehicles arrive, 5 vehicles depart. They performed 5 spacewalks. And just an awesome crew, watching them hand over with Crew-6 and the smiles on all their faces as they were working hard to hand over all the critical activities was just very cool to watch. With this mission on the ground, we turn our focus towards SpaceX 27 And so that vehicle will carry over 6,000 pounds of science, research, cargo, and crew supplies to the International Space Station. At this time, we're targeting the launch on March 14th at 7:30 p.m. Central Time, and we're excited to have just another cargo mission ready to go on board the International Space Station. Huge congratulations to our international partners. You know, we talked, this was our first integrated crew mission. It was awesome to have Koichi on board as the veteran leading the crew, and we're just excited to have an awesome partnership. Huge thanks to Commercial Crew Program and all my space station colleagues. With that, I will hand it over to Sarah.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me today. I'm so happy to have Crew-5 safely back on Earth. This completes our 6th NASA human spaceflight mission to the International Space Station. As Steve gave a lot of details, we had a nominal, very quiet return to one of our Gulf Coast landing sites just offshore of Tampa. Dragon's healthy, the parachutes performed nominally, and the teams are now transporting Dragon back to our refurbishment facility at Cape Canaveral. SpaceX has now launched Dragon 38 times to orbit, 35 times to ISS. A quick personal story. So the very first test flight of Dragon in December 2010, it orbited the Earth a few times and safely returned 4 hours later. That's what inspired me to come join the SpaceX team. So within 6 months, I was at SpaceX preparing Dragon for its first visit to ISS. Grateful NASA and NASA gave SpaceX the opportunity to serve them in such a big way. I've been on the Dragon team ever since, and it's been the ride of my life. So last week's Crew-6 launch marks the start of our 9th human spaceflight mission overall. 8 of them have visited the ISS, and all carrying 34 humans to space since May of 2020. And then after the first dozen or so of those 38 Dragon flights, we had set up large-scale refurbishment capabilities and have now flown 18 of those missions on reflown Dragons, tapping into the full usage of this amazing vehicle's capability. So Joel also mentioned that with Crew-5 safely home, my team back on shore continues final launch preparations of the Cirrus 27 cargo mission, which will transport cargo and science to the station in just a few days. That vehicle has been safely transported to the hangar at Launch Complex 39A, and it's mated to the Falcon 9 that will take it to orbit. So I'll be talking to you again in just a couple days ahead of that launch. Thanks so much to NASA, Roscosmos, JAXA, and the 45th for your trust, partnership, and close collaboration on the Crew-5 mission. Job well done tonight to the entire integrated team.
All right, thank you, Sarah. And next up we have Hiroshi Sasaki, Vice President with JAXA.
Thank you for introductions. I'm Hiroshi Sasaki, Vice President of JAXA, responsible for human spaceflight and space explorations. First of all, on behalf of JAXA, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to the NASA leadership, SpaceX, our international partners, Roscosmos, ESA, and CSA, and all the colleagues who have devoted to the successful mission. I'm so happy to see Koichi, Nicole, Josh, and Anna coming back home safely on the Crew Dragon. Koichi, as a veteran astronaut, as Joe mentioned, his total stay in space has reached more than 500 days. Through his 5 missions, starting from Space Shuttle, Soyuz to Crew Dragon. During his stay on the ISS, Koichi has also accomplished his first EVA along with Nico. No one has ever conducted first EVA at his age, and it really gave us hope and courage that it's never too late to take bold challenges. And just 2 weeks ago, JAXA announced the selection of 2 new astronaut candidates. And I hope Koichi will mentor new astronauts and pass on his experience. And last November, Japan has decided to extend its participation in the ISS program by 2030. To make the most of this great facility, JAXA is committed to promote technical demonstration toward the Artemis program, including the Lunar Gateway and lunar surface activities. We'll also promote commercial activities in low Earth orbit, as well as science missions to bring benefits back here on Earth. It is such an exciting moment to continue working with NASA, international partners, and industries. Once again, it is great to see you all back home, and thank you so much to NASA and SpaceX.
All right, thank you, Sasaki-san. We're going to open it up now for questions and answers. Per usual, please let us know who your question is addressed towards. And if you're on the phone bridge and would like to ask a question, make sure you're hitting *1 to get into the queue. We are going to start off with Stephen Clark and Spaceflight Now. Stephen?
Thank you, Dan. I think my question is for Steve Stich. We heard a couple of calls during the return tonight about an AGPS message or alert the crew might receive during entry that might seem like it might affect the automated parachute deployment. Can you talk a little bit about what exactly that was? Obviously, it was no impact in the end, but what was that issue? And can you give us an update on Starliner? I know there was a decision point around this time, early March, whether to fuel the spacecraft for CFT, and wondering if you can give us an update on how those preps are going. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Stephen. The first question regarding the GPS, the crew was just being told, sometimes when we come out of the period where we have the plasma around the vehicle, where we don't have comm with Dragon, it takes a little bit of time for the GPS to lock up, and they were just given a kind of a cautionary message. If they see this message, it means everything's fine, and that the GPS will lock up just fine. There was a period of time earlier on orbit where GPS had lost the signal for a little bit of time, basically due to some interference from the ground. So it was just kind of a cautionary thing. The GPS performed well the whole time on orbit and well during the entire entry. Second question relative to Starliner. I haven't had a chance to focus that lot on Starliner over the last. We were talking today. It's been 20 days since the agency FRR and our teams the NASA SpaceX teams have been working really hard on the Crew-6 launch and then the Crew-5 return. We are in the middle of final preps for the CFT flight and in the middle of really closing out all the certification work. I think I talked to you guys a few weeks back about going through all the cert products and then going through the final phases of the flight software testing, and that's kind of where we're at. We really need to step back here in March and take a look at where we're at and then determine what the next steps are. Right now, we're targeting a no earlier than launch date of the end of April for that flight.
All right, thank you, Steve. Next up, we have Bill Harwood with CBS News. Bill.
Hey, thanks. I've got a couple of real quick ones here for you. For Joel, I'd heard that the Soyuz guys were going to strap into the MS-22 vehicle, maybe do a little power-up test to see what kind of heat loads there are with 3 people there and the cooling problem they've had. Is that still on, and do you know when that might be? Also wondering when they might move the MS-23 vehicle from Poist down to, I guess, Prashal. And then a final one. I'm sorry to load 3 questions here, but can any of you, I'm not sure anyone can answer this question, but is there some reason why we never see real-time vehicle trajectory, like animation or some kind of display from deorbit to splashdown like we always had during shuttle and other missions? I'm just wondering, I don't recall ever seeing this from SpaceX, and I'm wondering why. Thanks.
Let's see, I'll take the first couple, and then we'll hand over the other ones. On the Soyuz test, so yes, the teams are looking at if it makes sense to go ahead and do kind of a thermal loading test. We would do it with the 2 cosmonauts that are returning in that vehicle, plus Fadayev, who came up on Crew-6. We're looking at possibly next week. We got a preliminary date of doing that test next week, and we've been talking to the folks at Mission Control Center Moscow, reviewing the criteria for the test, what the goals of the test are, the backup plans in case it gets too warm in the vehicle. Roscosmos was able to collect some data, and they're still evaluating it from the Progress vehicle. While not exactly the same as Soyuz, as you know, Bill, you did get some collection of data. So the teams are reviewing all that, but they are looking at a test later this week, or the 15th, 16th is what the preliminary date was. As far as the move, The last date I had when I checked in was April 6th for that move. And then let's see, I think you had some telemetry questions.
Yeah, I can try. I think Bill's question was, why do we not show the kind of displays that we did for Space Shuttle? Space Shuttle we would generally show from memory, and it's been a while, the trajectory displays from the front of the Mission Control Center, typically where the vehicle was, and I probably don't have a good answer for why we're not doing that. Bill, the trajectory is probably a little less interesting than the shuttle trajectories because you know, the capsules just in general don't have the cross range that the orbiter had, and so it's pretty much kind of a straight shot from orbit really to the landing site. But I'll see if Sarah has anything to add.
No, those are good words. Thanks, Steve.
All right, next up we have Mark Carreau with Aviation Week. And again, reminder, if you do want to ask a question, press *1 to get into the queue. But go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. My question's for Joel. Once the Soyuz MS-22 returns to Earth and is recovered and evaluated, what sort of insight can NASA expect to get into the difficulty that led to the external coolant loop damage and leak?
Hey, thanks, Mark. You know, the part that was damaged does not return to Earth in a place where we can go ahead and take a look. You know, the part that got damaged breaks up, and so we're not able to get any, you know, you can't go back and say, hey, let's look at that piece that came back. Now, what we are able to do is monitor temperatures inside the capsule as it returned, and, you know, track temperatures as well as humidity. And that data will be shared with NASA from the Mission Control Center Moscow team, the Energia folks, and Roscosmos folks. So we'll be getting data like that. Unfortunately, like I said, we can't get the actual area that showed the damage.
All right, thank you, Joel. And I'm going to pause for just a moment. I have no other questions in the queue, so giving you guys a moment, press *1 if you have a question. And we'll go to Marcia Smith with Space Policy Online. Marcia.
Thanks so much. Following up on Mark's question, there was this report yesterday in Izvestia and TASS that there were some Roscosmos specialists who were questioning again whether or not the damage to MS-22 and Progress MS-21 were from micrometeorites or if it was a manufacturing defect. Can you comment on those stories? And are you still confident in the safety of Soyuz MS-23? Because the implication was that they're worried that MS-23 might have the same kind of defect.
Okay. So, hey, thank you for the question. I haven't seen those exact stories. You know, I can tell you that and I was just in Moscow a couple of weeks ago for the Soyuz launch and docking. When we were over there, we talked about a number of things. In addition to MMOD, micrometeorite orbital debris, the team in Roscosmos and Energia, they're looking at manufacturing. You know, is there something there? Did something change in the production of these vehicles? And so, which is exactly what we would do on our side, right? You know, you look at all the data you have, look at everything, all the possibilities to make sure you're looking at everything. We are confident in this vehicle. As you know, we moved the seat liners from the vehicle that was up there prior to Soyuz, that was moved over, as well as Frank Rubio's seat liner that was moved from Crew-5 over to the Soyuz vehicle. So we're confident in that, but you know, confidence is good, but we're always looking. You know, that's what we do best in the space program, and that's done on both the Roscosmos side as well as the NASA side.
All right, now we've got Mike Wall with Space.com. Mike.
Thank you all. Just one quick question about the MS-22 crew. Is the plan still to keep them on board until late September? And is that like plan kind of set in stone, or could it shift depending on like whatever factors kind of pop up? What's the latest thinking about? I mean, will they end up spending a year in space, do you think?
Yeah, right now the manifest has that the next Soyuz in September, but I know Roscosmos is reviewing everything. They're reviewing the manifest now that we got a little time behind us with the current Soyuz. I know that they'll spend the next month or so looking at the Soyuz manifest as well as progress manifest and seeing what makes sense. But as far as the baseline today, it remains September.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Joel. And that looks like that's all the questions that we have. So thank you, everybody, for dialing in. We will go ahead and wrap there today. Thank you to all of my briefers. Thanks for everybody for following along as Crew-5 returned home safely to Earth. And with that, we will let you go. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks for tuning in.